Chapter 16. $1 billion by idealizing the movement of things. Everyone wants abundance of all things. And specifically, everyone wants money and all the things that take the place of money. Can you turn a desire for money directly into money? No, certainly not. Money is the result of abundance, not abundance itself. Let us agree upon the meaning of the term. When one friend is thinking of a Persian cat, and another is thinking of an ordinary house cat, both will disagree with what I am saying about a cat if I am thinking and talking about a wild cat. Therefore, qualify at once the word abundance. One meaning of the word is sufficiency, enough to meet all our true needs, present and future. Idealizing the process to secure abundance should not be limited to securing money directly. Other factors are more important. There are an abundance of ideas, recognition of the abundant opportunities that surround you, and being abundantly prepared to make use of them. Lack of material abundance is not a lack of ideas, but money lack always indicates a poverty of ideals regarding the right process of getting money. Once all hairpins were made of straight wire and were always moving, always slipping out of the lady's hair. Millions of women were disturbed about it for scores of years, and many people, millions of them, had ideas about it. Hundreds of thousands consciously desired and wished for something better and thought about it. Nothing, however, resulted from the ideas and thoughts of these hundreds of thousands. Not a one of them ever made a cent out of his or her thoughts or ideas. There was no abundance in them, but there was an abundance in the ideal of a hairpin with which itself prevented itself from moving easily. The man who idealized and produced the crinkly wire hairpin is now a multi-millionaire. Abundance always resides in an ideal, whether of property or management or manufacturing or position of whatnot. It resides in idealizing even the detailed parts of things and the movement of so common a substance as oil. The steps in the idealizing process which brought success to Mr. Rockefeller were, first, he idealized oil in detail. The other oil men, then wealthier than Mr. Rockefeller, thought of oil only as oil, as costing so much per barrel, as selling for so much, and as bringing so much profit. Mr. Rockefeller thought of these things, but in addition he idealized oil in all its details. Mentally he visioned other substance in it, not at all like oil. Moreover, he idealized the process of separating these from the oil, and out of these came the byproducts. Today it is said the Standard Oil Company could give away all its oil and yet pay good dividends out of the profits of its byproducts. Let us be just. This wealth from the byproducts was due to the fact that Mr. Rockefeller was less realistic than others. He idealized the oil that to others was just oil and nothing more. Second, Mr. Rockefeller idealized the movement of oil. Other oilmen thought of transporting oil just as barrels of flour and barrels of sugar are transported, but Mr. Rockefeller idealized it in motion. He saw it flowing, idealized it flowing in pipes, hence the pipeline system, the second great source of Standard Oil profits and supremacy. Again, let us be just. God and his laws rule. Mr. Rockefeller won phenomenal financial success because he idealized, more than did his competitors, the detailed parts of the thing and its movement. On the other hand, Mr. Rockefeller did not idealize his relationship to the rest of society. He thought of himself as a man standing alone. For 40 years he was silent, unwilling that anyone within his company should give any statement regarding their policies or methods to the public. He failed to idealize the truth that men are bound together in a social structure and consequently separated himself from others. He failed to win the trust and goodwill of mankind. Ideas, thoughts composed of ideas, and plans made up of such thoughts seldom become realities. But once the smallest of the largest thing is idealized, the soul, which conceives the ideal, cannot rest until the ideal has become an actuality. If you would have your desires for abundance fulfilled, idealize them in the process of obtaining them, and abundance cannot be kept from you. Chapter 17. Building up a successful business. In business you fail in some things and succeed in others. You are often failing and succeeding at the same time, failing to make one part of your business successful, and succeeding in making another part increase in pay. The failures are due to the ideas held, the successes to the ideals. If you idealize the entire process of your business, you will not only avoid failures and partial failures, but will think of possibilities never thought of before, the very ones that will lead you to succeed. To illustrate, I shall use a simple case, one of the simplest that ever came to me, yet one of the most interesting, and one, the success of which, gave me as much joy as the success of many so-called big affairs. In this instance, there was a woman in the case, and it's her story I shall tell. The woman, a widow with 4 children, she then lived in the suburb of Chicago. Her husband had died 3 months before. She was left as proprietor of a small grocery and delicatessen store. The conditions. As the husband had been ill 3 months before his death, savings had been used in doctor bills, hospital bills, and funeral expenses. Though the store was a little affair, it had a good business in this section of the wealthy suburb so long as it had been the only store there. But about the time of the husband's death, one of those large companies that establish branch stores all over a great city built a white-tiled, plate-glass, 2-story building on the corner opposite her little shop. It cut down the business of the little store so much that the woman was unable to even make a living for herself and her children. The problem. I confess when she first told me the entire story, it seemed impossible for her to compete with the new store with all its services, its supplies, and its $1 million parent company back of it. The first step. The first thought was, God is not only all supply, but he is also all process and means. The second, since God is all process and means, he knows and has all ideas necessary to make his store a success. And the third, since God's ideas are ideal, we can get in touch with him as soon as we idealize our own. How we went about it. We idealized, 1, to those to whom she could sell, and 2, the business itself, and 3, the woman. Visualizing the people of the community was a simple matter. All were medium well-to-do. Most families had 2 or more maids. They entertained often at their homes, dinner parties, and eating affairs. But what could this woman sell to them which the other stores could not supply? Idealizing the business. The woman told me the greatest profit was made in handling bakery goods. The big bakeries of the cities delivered goods each morning and took back what was left unsold the day before. In this line there was no waste and no loss. Moreover, the profit of the amount invested was made daily. If the woman invested $10 in canned goods, it might be a month before all were sold. If she made a 10% profit, she made but 10% on $10 in a month. But with bakery goods, if she invested $10 in the morning and sold the goods during the day at 10% profit, she made 10% on $10 in one day. Evidently, in this case, bakery goods was to be the leader. But how could this little woman make her bakery goods lead over the goods of the other store, when both of them could buy from the same bakery, and the other store had more money than she, and hence could buy better and more extensive supplies than she could? Idealizing the woman. All the time she talked, I had a feeling of conflicting ideas in my mind about her. Those remained indefinite until it flashed upon me that, although her name was Mrs. Hanson, Scandinavian, she spoke with a Scottish accent. The new thought. Scotch, Scotland, Scotch tarts, those delicious uncovered fruit pies, 2.5 and 3 inches deep and as big as a dinner plate. Scotch tarts, which only Scotch and English women know how to make. Are you Scotch? I asked. Yes, she replied, evidently surprised. Can you make Scotch tarts? Yes, at least I used to. Then go down in my kitchen and make one, or anything you think necessary, but make the best one you know how to make. That night I tasted a tart equal to any I'd ever eaten, and the next morning she started the pie industry. I sent a note out to a few acquaintances, telling them the old pagan gods on Mount Olympus would still be content happy if the nectar were taken from them, providing they could get real Scotch tarts. Also that I had found a Scotch woman who could make just these tarts, and that these delicious desserts should be secured in Chicago. And I also added that they would be wise to send their maids early in the morning with an order to Mrs. Hanson. The success. The first day she made 12 pies and sold every one of them. At a good price, too, for these were no dollar pies. These pies were pies, apple tarts 3 inches deep, with gooseberry sauce to be served with whipped cream. They were worth much more pies, but much more as a distinctive dessert not procurable elsewhere. Of course, the pie business grew and grew. Moreover, as families bought their tarts from Mrs. Hanson, their maids also ordered other things at the same time. The idealized leader became the actual leader of group after group of other goods sold from the shelves of her store. Idealizing the process, God working in every step, led us to get the new idea, the new thought of making Scotch tarts. Common sense? Yes. Only common sense? No. It was idealized common sense. God is all process, and his ideas are your ideas, unlimited, as soon as you idealize your own thought process so as to be in touch with his. Chapter 18. 5 minutes idealizing a day makes you super efficient. Someone once said, "Order is heaven's first law." Who it was, I do not know. It was first said thousands of years ago, and I am not old enough to remember. But the saying, being old and persisting through the ages, I know it must be very true, else the race would not have conceived it and kept it alive in our consciousness. Heaven is the kingdom of God. Order is God's first law. Without order in the process of your thinking and order in the act of doing things, ideals and desires do not come true. The value of idealizing a series of things to be done before starting to do them is well illustrated by this experience. The scene: office of a physician in a South American city. City just visited by cyclone, destruction freakiest places, some telephone exchanges in order, houses here and there almost completely destroyed, many others not damaged, yet scores of people severely injured by falling walls. The work to be done. As the cyclone passed, many telephone messages begged the physician's immediate assistance. The first asked him to hurry to a certain place to attend a woman whose scalp was torn and who evidently was suffering from internal injuries. And he was about to leave when the second message from another place begged him to come there at once and attend a man with a broken leg and an injured back. Message followed message, 20 and more, each of which he listed. It was then he changed his plans, and even though he realized that each case should be attended quickly, he did not rush off. The first thing he did, he took the receiver from his telephone, for there was no need of listing more calls. These and those he would find would be all he could attend to. Then for 5 minutes he sat quietly at his desk, seemingly doing nothing. The second thing, quickly he wrote a list of medicines, cotton, bandages, etc., and calling his office girl, told her to rush to the druggist at the corner, to insist that they be given to her at once, and to wait with him outside the druggist's store till he came. The third thing, he telephoned the department store a block beyond the drugstore and ordered a clerk to stand ready with 50 blankets at the door of the store. The fourth thing, he rapidly selected from his operating room every instrument that might be necessary in any kind of emergency case. The fifth thing, taking his bag of instruments and his medicine cases, he ran into his auto at the door, drove to the drugstore corner, where, without stopping his machine, he snatched the package from the girl, and continued on to the department store, where he commanded the clerk to dump the blankets in the car. The sixth thing, then and only then did he begin his work of assistance, going rapidly from one injured person to another. The result, in no case was anything lacking that was needed, and the records show that during the afternoon he attended twice as many injured as any other physician in the city. The result of his work shows that his efforts of the afternoon were most efficient. But what did he do while sitting at the desk? Did he waste those first 5 minutes? This is what he did. First, he idealized all the different kinds of injuries reported to him, and in addition all the possible injuries he might be called upon to treat. Second, he visualized all the medicines, antiseptics, accessories, etc. that would be required and might be required, visioned his own supply, and such a surplus to be obtained at the drugstore as would make any lack impossible. Third, he idealized what should be done at once to aid the future recovery of those injured, the wisdom of wrapping each one in a warm blanket immediately after the first aid, as protection from the after chill of the storm. Fourth, he visualized the places where the most seriously injured were reported to be, idealized himself going from one to another by shortest route, and repeated the process, visioning the places where the less seriously injured were, all this in 5 minutes. Yes, the mind trained to idealize the process, and knowing that God is in every process, works more rapidly than radio. Were the first 5 minutes wasted? Those 5 minutes more than doubled his service that afternoon and evening, and there was no failure to give aid because some necessary thing was lacking. But we see the value of idealizing the process of doing things in emergency, But we forget that in our lives each hour is an emergency, a call to do the most and live the most. Chapter 19. Turning desires for sales into actual sales. In essence, every phase of contact in human society is a sale. If you apply for and secure a position, you sell yourself to the employer, who buys your services in competition with many others. If you are the leader of a great reform movement, carrying the ideal of that reform to the mass of people and winning them to support it, you are selling your ideals to them. Of course, there are business sales. For every phase of business operation and management is a sale of things, ideas, ideals of service. The process of selling is always the same. Any sale you desire to make, any sale you have in mind as an ideal, can be made a reality. But every idea you have of a sale may fall through. If you idealize the value of that which you wish to sell, you give it additional selling value. If you idealize the process of selling it, you discover new means of selling. If you idealize all kinds of possible buyers of that which you have for sale, you discover a buyer capable of perceiving the additional value you have given your product, and a buyer capable of willing to pay for that value. A case for illustration. A man owned a tract of land near Pasadena, California. On this there was a $10,000 mortgage. He had bought it on a shoestring, planning soon to sell it, for it was expected that a building boom would make it a desirable residence site before the $10,000 was due. Conditions at the end of 6 months. The building boom had not materialized. The mortgage was due in 10 days. Real estate men refused to take it up. Those holding the mortgage refused to extend it. The bankers wouldn't touch it. Cause for refusal? The land was in a hollow. Real estate men and bankers were convinced no one would buy it until every other residence site near it had been sold. That might be years hence. The owner's first efforts. When at the end of the first 3 months the boom failed to boom, he recognized abundant supply, and faithfully and persistently and confidently affirmed, God is all abundance, and all is God. 3 months went by. The money did not drop from the heaven, but something else dropped, the corners of his banker's mouth. What was the trouble? Faithfully and confidently the owner affirmed the truth. God is the source of abundant supply. Why then the failure? Because God is spirit, and consequently as long as he continued merely to affirm God is abundant supply, the supply continued in a spiritual state. This the bankers refused to cash. They wanted certified checks. After a failure of more than 2.5 months, the owner tried idealizing the process. First, he idealized the land in all its details, and at once a new thought came. If this land is not now valuable as a residence site, certainly there are the uses for it, and since God knows all uses, the idea of another use will come to me. Second, he idealized the changes in its condition at different seasons of the year, and hurrah, another new thought he had not thought before. Since the land was in a hollow, and the moisture of the surrounding land drains into it, it is green many more months a year than surrounding land, an important condition in dry California, and hence it is ideal for truck gardening. Third, he idealized his activities in relation to it and to the bankers. Since God is all process, he must know many ways of convincing a banker's mind. Hence a third new thought. Many people talk to bankers about the value of their land. I'll do something besides talk to make my banker realize the value of this land as a truck garden plot. So in one day he called upon 3 different owners of truck gardens and got 3 separate offers to buy his land, although the best price offer was less than the owner wished to accept. But as the sum offered was much more than the mortgage, it made the banker himself take new notice, and even he had a new thought. A very difficult operation for a banker. His new thought was, even if this land is not valuable for a residence site at present, it must be valuable for a truck garden lot if 3 promising truck gardeners want to buy it, and if they are willing to pay what they've offered, a $10,000 mortgage is certainly safe. So the deal was closed. 2.5 months have been spent in idealizing the thing desired, and at the end of the time it was still desired. 3 days were spent in idealizing the process, and at the end of the 72 hours the thing was done. Idealizing the thing desired leads you to repeat old thoughts. Idealizing the process leads you from one new thought to another new thought. Chapter 20. land values increase 400% in 4 days. One of our writers has emphasized the policy of using that you have to get what you want. It is a policy of failure if you do not idealize that which you have. If, however, you idealize the thing you have to use in the process of using it, it becomes a sure road to success and great success. Values are increased only by idealizing. But how can the mind of itself and within itself, by a mere process of thinking, increase the value of anything? Especially, let us say, the value of such a thing as a piece of land, of real estate. Certainly it seems that its value depends not only on what we think about it. You know what land is, but do you know what the value is? Certainly value is nothing material. If mind did not distinguish between a diamond and a piece of coal and give special value to the former because of our desire for beauty, the material of the diamond would be no more valuable than the material of a piece of coal of the same size. If there were no mental conception regarding the purity of the diamond and no desire to possess it and use it as decoration, diamonds would possess no more value than pebbles. Now let us consider the idealizing of the value of a piece of land, so that the process increased its value in 4 days from less than 200 an acre to 1,000 an acre. The land of which I write is situated in eastern Pennsylvania near a very beautiful lake some distance from railroads. It was purchased 24 years ago as a farmland at less than 15 an acre. It was left as part of an estate to 2 nephews. The younger one became of age in 1919, and the land was offered for sale. They desired to obtain $200 an acre for it and felt that, if they could sell it at that price, they would be very lucky. Many things had happened in the last 24 years. The land is still far from the railroad, but every foot of the land around the little lake has been purchased by millionaires from Philadelphia and New York. In fact, in 1919 they had spent $3 million in general improvements of this millionaire's colony, in addition to the money spent on individual estates. The land of the 2 nephews, however, was not of great value. The acreage was not large enough for a great estate, and the land was not good as farmland. In no sense did it lend surrounding value to the land. Those who knew the land thought it ought to be worth 200 an acre, but as the months went by it was not sold. The nephews were anxious to realize on their land. They wished to go into business, and knowing me, they called one day to ask for help. I idealized it as farmland and saw its uselessness. In fact, it had been neglected so long that it would take 2 or 3 years to bring it back to normal condition. Then I idealized it as a site for a country estate of a wealthy man. But I saw it would not do for that. It was not large enough. Next, I idealized the entire colony of millionaires about it. I idealized its nearness to New York and Philadelphia. I idealized the people in the city who desired homes. I idealized human nature, realizing that there were many cultured people of limited means who desired to live near very wealthy people who would enjoy life in the community of such people. Consequently, out of the cosmos there came to my mind the ideal of making this land a little park divided into 40 little home plots of 1 acre each. The nephews and myself drew up this plan. We had given added value to the actual land by creating an idealized use of it, a vision of a little park among the millionaires for 40 families each with its own little country home. The first result was accomplished within 48 hours. The plan was presented to a real estate man in New York City. At once he wished to buy the entire plot at 300 an acre. But the nephews had seen a vision. The idealization had given value to their land, and they refused. The real estate man offered 400 and then 500 an acre for it. The second result was that within 4 days the nephews were offered $1,000 an acre for the first plot that was to be sold. And why? The land was exactly the same land it had been a week before, but value has been added by idealizing a little community of 40 cultured families living near a colony of millionaires, and value had also been given to it by creating a desire for such homes. These 2 factors, the mental plan and the desire created, gave a greatly increased value from 200 to 1,000 an acre in 4 days. Because of the plan and the desire created in the minds of those to whom the plan was given, this run-down, neglected farmland led in value all the other farmland, even though the other farmlands were improved and cultivated. This was possible because this land was hilly and rolling and partly wooded. Therefore, other farmland could not compete with this as plots for homes. Moreover, in value, this land within 4 days after the plan were made and presented was worth just 500% more than the land of the great estates surrounding them. It was worth more because it could be purchased in small plots, while the owners of the estates would not consider selling an acre or even 10 acres of the land they owned. Hence this land, which 4 days before the plan was conceived by idealization as the tale of land values, became the leader of land values in comparison with farmland value and that of the great estates. Whenever you wish to increase the value of anything you have to sell, add mental effort by saying idealization that fits the best use that can be made of the thing. Whenever you wish to give a predominant value to anything, idealize a plan and create a desire for it in such a way that the thing you have to sell leads all other things near it or approximately like it. Thus, by actual practice, you prove that all value is of mind, and thus that all value is of God. The value of that which you possess depends upon the sanely idealized concept with which you endow it, and the desire you create in other minds for the honest value you have given it.